Hello everyone. Today we're going to be looking at another one of the vintage computers in my collection. Before I begin this video, I would like to say thanks to everyone who watched and commented on the first video that I uploaded to my channel. I was not expecting that many people to watch and comment on that video, so thank you all very much. I hope that I will be able to make more videos in the future. They might not come very often because I do have other things going on in my life that keep me busy, but I do hope to keep producing videos at a somewhat regular schedule. So with that in mind, let's take a look at this computer. This is another Gateway. This one is a G6-350 model with a Pentium 2 processor inside, and this computer, when it was new, was actually pretty nice because it has a DVD-ROM drive, which would have been a fairly novel feature at the time this computer was manufactured. And we also have at the front a 1.44 megabyte floppy drive. Now, for anyone wanting to get into the hobby of collecting, restoring, and using vintage computers, first of all, I absolutely recommend it. However, there are going to be some things that you want to know before you get started in acquiring your first vintage system. If we turn around the computer here, I will show you a couple of the things that you will want to be aware and that you will want to look out for when you are looking for a system to acquire. Here on the motherboard we have PS2 ports, USB 1.1 ports, of which there are two serial ports, a printer parallel port, and a luxury at the time on this motherboard, onboard sound. Now, the onboard sound on this motherboard is nothing special, which is why we have our expansion cards down here. We have an NVIDIA Riva 128 3D graphics accelerator. Now, this is relatively important for this project because I want to use this computer to play some early 3D accelerated games on. And this video card was one of the first cards to offer similar performance to a 3DFX Voodoo 2 in a manner that was price competitive. So while a Voodoo 2 would have been more expensive than the Riva 128 when it launched, its performance was still good enough that it found its way into pre-built systems such as this one, and it found a fair amount of success in consumer purchase upgrades as well. And as we all know, NVIDIA went on to not only purchase 3DFX, but they also became one of the most valuable companies in the world on their own many years into the future from this card. We also have a 10100 Ethernet card in this machine that I just had lying around and happened to install. I mainly use this so I can not only connect this machine to the internet, but also connect to my local area network, so I can easily transfer files in between my modern-ish systems and my vintage systems. Now, there are multiple ways you can do this. You can either use Ethernet, or you can use either the USB ports on the motherboard that are USB 1.1, or you can install a USB 2 card, of which I do not currently have one in this machine. One other option you could use if you are using an IDE to CF card or IDE to SD card adapter for your hard drive, you can just take out the SD card or CF card, put it in a reader that's in a modern computer, copy all your files over, and just get it done quickly and easily that way. Personally, when I build my computers for projects such as this, I like to keep things at least relatively period correct, and a network card, while always on broadband, would have been a luxury that was unaffordable for a lot of people when this computer was manufactured. It is certainly very much a commodity today, and one that I will happily take advantage of. And this is a period correct card, being from the late 1990s, as far as I know. Moving down here, we have a Sound Blaster Audigy, which I will show you more once I take the side cover off, but I selected this mainly because I wanted to try messing around with some EAX capabilities of the sound card, and I also was attracted to it because it has a FireWire port, so you could hook up external FireWire peripherals such as a digital video camera and then copy the digital video over to your computer over that high-speed FireWire. And we have a telephone modem in the last slot of the computer in the ISA slot. I currently have this disabled, and I should probably take that out, but I just have not gotten around to it. The side panel is very easy to take off. It's just this. It didn't even have screws when I got it, and I would say that the screws were missing, but I'm not entirely sure that they ever came with one, because every single one of these types of machines with this style of case, I have not seen thumb screws on them, so I don't know why they would be missing. I love how smooth the side panel is, because it has this like padding to soften the impact and wear on the case itself. But we'll put that down to the side right now and take a better look at the computer itself, if I can slide it around smoothly. On the inside, we have an Intel Pentium 2 processor clocked at 350 megahertz. Now, what makes this processor special is not necessarily the processor and its clock speed itself, but rather the front side bus speed. This motherboard and CPU is based off of a 100 megahertz front side bus speed, so everything from the RAM to the expansion cards would be faster than on earlier Pentium 2 and Pentium Pro systems, which gave you a very nice performance boost at the time, and that is part of the reason why the Intel 440BX chipset that this motherboard is based off of enjoyed such a long lifespan in the realm of personal computer hobbyists and enthusiasts and gamers. Believe it or not, this chipset actually lasted quite a long time, even into the lifespan of its successors, the Intel 810 and 820 chipset. The reason for this being the Intel 810 was sort of the budget grade chipset, and the 440BX actually outperformed it in some measures. Part of that could be because Intel did not want the 810 to cannibalize the sales of their 820 chipset, which was aimed towards higher end power user enthusiast consumers. However, the problem with the 820 chipset was that it used expensive proprietary Rambus RD RAM, and people were not very fond of it, so they continued using the Intel 440BX because of its stability and the fact that it uses SD-RAM. There is currently 128 megabytes of RAM in this machine with 2 memory modules, 64 megabytes each. We have a Quantum 10.2 gigabyte hard drive in this machine, which is plenty for running Windows 98 in some games, and the fact that this machine supports such large hard drives is part of why I would call this the ideal Windows 98 gaming setup. Now, it might not be perfect, but I would say it's pretty close because it captures what is, in my opinion, the best of 3 eras. The first era is late MS-DOS based software rendered games. You can easily run DOS based games in MS-DOS mode, excuse me, under Windows 98. And the Pentium 2 350 is certainly powerful enough to run even demanding DOS games relatively well, even in higher resolutions such as 640 by 480. The second part is 3D accelerated games such as GL Quake and titles such as that. Because, as I mentioned earlier, we have an NVIDIA Riva 128 graphics card in the AGP slot. Now, you can upgrade this for a better card if you would like, but the Riva 128 is the original card to this machine from what I can tell and have read through historical literature, and I am not unhappy with its performance, so I think I'm going to leave it in here at least for the time being. So this card provides Direct3D and OpenGL compatibility. It's not perfect. What would make it perfect is if it included support for the Glide API, which obviously it doesn't because only 3DFX cards could use that API. But most games, unless you want to go into the earliest 3D accelerated games, also include render paths for Direct3D and OpenGL. As I mentioned previously, we have the Ethernet card and the Sound Blaster Audigy sound card, and which also has a CD analog audio cable running up to our optical drive. Now, you might have noticed how this motherboard has onboard sound. Well, if we zoom in here on the camcorder, we can see the sound chip that it uses. This is the Creative ES1371, which is kind of, well, I would say that if you have absolutely nothing else, you can use it to get basic functionality for testing as like a control group of sorts, but I would recommend upgrading to a better sound card in the future once you are able to do so. Speaking of sound cards, the Sound Blaster Audigy and the Sound Blaster Live are relatively cheap compared to some of the ISA sound cards that are available for sale. So if you can find an ISA based sound card such as an AWE64 or something along those lines, go ahead and pick it up if it's at a good price and you're looking to build a system like this. However, there is a wide array of support for PCI based sound cards such as the Audigy and Sound Blaster Live, so don't feel bad if you can only get your hands on one of those at a particular time, because this sound card performs quite well in games, as I will demonstrate when I move over to my tech area to hook this machine up and power it on. Okay, now we have the computer set up over here at the table with our IBM Model M keyboard and Random eMachines mouse. But this time, I am using a proper CRT monitor with this setup. This is a monitor that I happened to get for free from my neighbor, and it works great. I have a feeling this is a relatively low hours unit because it is quite sharp, and even on minimum brightness, it's still plenty clear for me to see. So, without further ado, let's go ahead and turn the monitor on, wait for it to warm up, and turn the computer on. This machine has only one fan in it. It's right by where the heatsink was, and it goes into the power supply. And if you feel back here, it moves quite a bit of air. So, which of course would be a necessity if it's the only fan in the computer. So, we're booting into Windows 98 right now, and I did mention that I had some problems setting up this machine. One of them was related to the sound card, and that's the main one that I had when I tried to set this machine up, and I will go into a little bit more detail once the machine is fully booted up and I get set up here. Okay, now that we're fully booted up in the Windows, first of all, let me see if I can change the graphic settings, so hopefully I can make it flicker at least less. That's better. Okay, so let's talk about one of the problems that I had with this machine. One of them was related to the sound card. It was a relatively minor issue, and in fact, I might be able to replicate it if I go into the MS-DOS prompt here, and if I do a directory listing, you can see this file called autog.bat. If let's see, we can maybe run it. Yeah, this is not the issue I was having, but yeah, basically when I would try to turn off the computer, it would say error could not load PCI driver, and then it would just wait for me to press a key and it wouldn't actually shut down the computer. So it was a minor annoyance. So I decided to completely separate my MS-DOS settings from my Windows 98 settings, which was the recommendation of people I asked online about this issue. So to show you what I mean, I'm going to go in here into my Windows directory, and when we scroll down, we'll find our exit to DOS shortcut. And what I did here, if we go into the properties of this file, it's basically a PIF file, which basically executes an MS-DOS program. If I go here and advanced, we can either use our current MS-DOS configuration, which is the default autoexec.bat and config.sys files that we use with Windows 98, or we can specify a new one, which I have done here, to load CD drivers and mouse drivers. And so when I reboot in MS-DOS mode, this is what will get loaded. And I had it call a batch file, which is the autog.bat file that I just tried to run earlier. So, and this basically is the autoexec.bat file that was created when I installed the DOS drivers for the Sound Blaster Audio sound card. And if I go to edit, it just sets the interrupt request settings and initializes the sound card. And I specifically made it this exit to DOS shortcut because if I go to start and shut down and select restart in MS-DOS mode, that's what it will do. It will just run that shortcut in those instructions. You can even copy it to the desktop and then just run it like that if you'd like. So I can just like do that, and that's it. And then if you ever want to restart in MS-DOS, you can just click this shortcut right here. So that was the main issue that I ran into in setting up this computer. Now, my advice to anyone who wants to get into vintage computers, if there's one skill that you'll want to have or learn quickly, is problem solving and troubleshooting skills. You're going to have to do some Googling and research and learn at least some basic DOS commands if you ever want to set up a Windows 98 or MS-DOS gaming PC. It's very fun to learn. It's very rewarding to figure out how to solve troublesome issues, but I do want to make everyone aware of what exactly they're going to get into before they start spending money and investing in equipment to get into this hobby. Now, one other problem that was relatively minor was my graphics settings. I said that I'm using an NVIDIA Revo 128. Now, if you look up this video card and find launch reviews for it, which are reviews that were written when the card was first released, a lot of them are complaining about the drivers and how they're either unoptimized or otherwise slow. In this card, a lot of people were complaining about OpenGL support and how this card used a relatively slow Direct3D to OpenGL wrapper that hampered performance. In the last driver release for this card, this actually uses a full mature OpenGL driver. So anyone who wants to get into playing early 3D accelerated games is going to want to do their research and figure out how many of the issues that people reported on in launch reviews were solved later on in the card's life, because cards that may have been looked down upon at the time might perform much better with better drivers now. The issue I had with this card was the color settings. Now, I tried, one of the main games that I've been playing on this machine is GL Quake, and anyone who's played this game can tell you that, relatively speaking, it's a dark game, but when I was playing it under Windows 98, it was way darker than it was in the DOS version, to the point where I couldn't even see enemies, which was annoying. And the way I solved it is just by fine-tuning the gamma up a little bit. It's a relatively simple fix, and it's in real time too, so you can see maybe the effect that it has on the display. And I just have it automatically applying the setting on startup. Now, speaking of GL Quake, let's demonstrate how this card performs in OpenGL games, such as this. And this is a game that a lot of people would have played when this card was new. Now, we're not going to get the music because I don't have a CD in here. I'm not sure if this video will get flagged for copyright if I use the CD, but just to be on the safe side, I am leaving it out. Now, we can also run the time demo here. Let me also go ahead and turn down the audio just so it's not too terribly loud. And this will give us a benchmark of how well this card can run the game, and it's actually pretty darn good. And there we go, we get a score of 52.4 FPS. Now, today's standard of 60 frames per second gaming, it doesn't meet that, but that's still really darn good. Another fun game that I've been playing a little bit of lately and will serve as today's Direct3D rendering demo is Motor Racer. It's pretty much an arcade motorcycle racing game, so we can go ahead and
select your mode.
We can do practice, single race, or championship. I think I've gotten first in pretty much every one of the race tracks on single, but I have not gone for the championship yet. But for this demonstration, we're just going to go for the single race. That's fine. I'm just going to do that. And this game actually is using CD audio. A lot of late 90s games actually used CD audio music tracks for the music, and it actually sounds really good. Way better than MIDI's in terms of quality anyway. But yeah, this is a pretty simple arcade racing game. I will turn it down a little bit though. And I do have all the Direct3D features turned on. This is definitely a game that is... I don't know if it's easy to learn, hard to master, because I haven't played too much of it yet, but... it's definitely just a fun, like, casual game. I'm not sure if this would be easier using, like, a joystick or not, but I haven't had any problems just using a keyboard like this. This is also the easiest track in the game, too, so I don't know how much, like, my success means here. But yeah, this thing is running very nicely, although you can definitely notice when it draws in different parts of the map. The draw distance is rather small, but I'm not sure how well this would perform on other cards, if it would at all, or if that's just a factor related to the Direct 3D, I think it's version 3 rendering engine itself. But it's not laggy. It is definitely silky smooth, running great. There is also a software rendering mode, which it just looks rougher. The textures aren't filtered and stuff like that. Also, I am absolutely smoking everybody here. One more lap to go. You can definitely get thrown off if you get bumped while you're doing stunts like that, so I usually just get ahead by sticking tightly to corners, and then once I'm in first place and ahead of everybody, I just do stunts to show off. Yeah, I definitely am running for the first place. I'm about to lap somebody, actually. Like I said, the other, I think, 4 tracks in this game are harder, and they will definitely provide a challenge, and there's more you can do to adjust the difficulty as well. But for now, we are the winners. I do not want to replay that, actually. I'm gonna quit race. Okay, so that's it for the 3D accelerated Windows games that I have loaded on this machine. But now let's take a look at our DOS mode setup. So I can go ahead and double click on our shortcut here, exit to MS-DOS, and it will do a full reboot of the computer here. And once it boots back up here, it will load our programs, including our CD-ROM device driver, our mouse driver, initializing the sound card, and we are good to go. And it starts off in the root of the C drive, so I can do CD. Let's just run Quake again, because I do have the DOS version as well, because the disk I use includes all the different versions of Quake. Now I can't remember, do I just do Quake. Let's just do Quake.exe and see if that works. Escape to skip that. And here we go. We have Quake in 320 by 200. It is definitely a downgrade compared to the OpenGL mode for this game, but we have sound, and if I load single player and new game, we have our mouse look, so we have working mouse and sound in MS-DOS mode. We can even try playing a little bit of the game. Why not? I will definitely say that the mouse look is definitely one of the best things to ever happen to these games, to ever come from this game in the configuration autoexec.cfg file, I believe. I can show you that once I'm done here, because what I've done is I've basically added a few keybinds to certain controls that I can't do by default, and I turned on mouse look. It's basically according to the settings that Thresh used in his Quake setup. For those who don't know who that is, Thresh is one of the first really pro gamers who actually earned money by winning Quake tournaments, and I think he even won a Ferrari in one of them as well, and he is credited for popularizing the WASD configuration that we use in first-person shooters today for the most part, and then using the mouse to look around, left mouse button to fire, etc. And yes, I am going for all of the secrets. Why not? We can have a little bit of fun. I would say that even in like software rendered 320 by 200, I would say that this game looks pretty darn good. I mean, obviously the OpenGL version looks better, but this is not unenjoyable by any means. And we can get some better armor here and go right back here. Let's see, I'm trying to remember if I got everything. I think I've gotten all the secrets so far. Actually, there's one up here, I believe, but it's kind of hard to get to. If I remember correctly, you can do F6 to quick save. It certainly took its sweet time, so if I mess this jump up, which I probably will, which I did, F9 is quick load. There we go, got it that time. And then up here is another one of these things. So now we can just go in. I love it when they're like their bodies get blown apart when you kill them when you're really close. And there we go. So that's Quake and DOS, and I did the time demo in OpenGL Quake as well. I love id Software's attitude in these screens. And it continues here. You can go ahead and pause the video and read this if you want, but thank you very much for watching this video, and feel free to leave a comment if you have one. Also, you need to type exit to restart back in the Windows, or if I turn off the computer, it will restart back in the DOS mode when I turn it back on, which isn't what you want.